Okay, good morning, good morning. I just want to offer a short welcome. Thank you for being here today and being part of the Sunday morning forum, so much appreciated. Today we have a speaker who is the executive director of Hanan Refugees Relief Group. Her name is Sheila Badwan, and she will speak to us today on how the Refugee Relief Group helps immigrants and all the things happening today. Also just wanted to remind you we're passing our forum baskets today, probably around 10 to 11 or something like that, so just pass them along and back to the end. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm Sheila Badwan, Executive Director of Hanan Refugees Relief Group. I wanted to give you a little history about Hanan and what's currently happening with our resettlement program, what's called the Reception and Placement Program. We started in 2016 during the Afghan crisis. We were actually an all-volunteer-run organization, and we were filling in gaps, assisting families as needed. I remember the first family that I helped, a Syrian family of 11, actually 13. It was 11 kids, mom and dad. They were farmers from Syria, didn't speak an ounce of English. They were illiterate in their own language. They did not drive. The mother never worked. Fast forward now in 2025, they were able to purchase their own home. Their oldest son finished college from Marquette University. Their daughter's also at UWM now. They both drive and they're working. The husband is a truck driver, and the mom is also a full-time worker at Amazon. So just to see, when I started, it was, I do speak Arabic. My parents immigrated back in the 70s from Palestine. And so I was able to relate and able to speak Arabic with them. And to see the opportunity they were given, and they give back. A lot of the refugees that we serve really do give back. You get down, push through this. You can keep going. Okay. So these are, I just wanted to list some of our team. Most of our staff are refugees. We speak actually 16 languages in our office. Some of them have, the refugees that we hire actually speak 5 languages. One of our case managers, she actually speaks 5 languages. So they bring a lot of skills, and to be able to give them that opportunity once they arrive, and really have been grateful for the team that we have.
Those are paid?
Yes, they're paid, yeah. Except for Barry. Barry just started with us. Hanan just became accredited. We are able to do now adjustment of status. Barrett McCormick is our first accredited rep through Hanan. So he was actually a retired professor from Marquette University, and he is able to speak with the refugees, and after 1 year, we're able to do adjustment of status for them to apply for green cards. So these are some of our programs, and we really, at Hanan, when we started, we were, this wasn't, a business for us. This was really to help the people. And so we really provide a lot of wraparound services for these refugees to help them really become self-sufficient, to succeed in the community. And I can tell you, many of them come back and volunteer with us and really help us. So the Refugee Resettlement Program, I want to talk a little bit about that particular program because this is what's, right now we are in a really challenging times. The reception and placement program, we were federally funded through the State Department. This program is for 90 days. So the way the process works is a refugee that might be in another country, such as Malaysia. We have, Wisconsin actually has the largest Rohingya population. And these refugees are registered through the UNHCR, and they go through a series of screenings, background checks, health screenings before they come to the US. Now, it can take anywhere from, typically anywhere from 5 to 10 years to come to the US. Certain countries, African countries, takes a little bit longer than that. And so once they arrive, Hanan is sort of their mother. We are their lifeline for the first 90 days. We have to find them jobs, we have to set up their homes, we have to enroll them in ESL classes, we enroll their kids in school. We really help them integrate into the community. So we actually pick them up from the airport, we provide them cultural meals, we provide them clothing. For the first 90 days, we also have to pay their rent and utilities, and all this funding comes from the federal government. Unfortunately, on January 24th, we were received what's called a stop work order. And that stop work order means that we had to stop services. And that also means our funding was cut. Basically, we're not going to get the services that we've even provided before that. They're not even paying for that right now. So we're in very challenging times because these people, we have to pay their rent, or they could face homelessness. So we have really hit the ground running with doing fundraising. I can say our community has been very generous in really helping support these clients of ours. And the cases that we brought in are such vulnerable cases. We have a lot of single mothers that we brought in, and I started as a volunteer back in 2016. This isn't, a job. I mean, it is my full-time job, but it was really to help people become self-sufficient. And I know across the US right now what's happening with a lot of resettlement agencies, they're shutting the doors because they can't service, they can't pay their staff. We're grateful to be in Wisconsin. We're grateful to have a great state refugee coordinator who's been very supportive. So we're unfortunately had to do some layoffs. However, we still have staff. We have, one of the things about Hanan is we have a robust volunteer group. And Deb, who's here, is one of our volunteers. She's been with us for about 3 years now. And so we have a robust volunteer group. So we have tapped into our volunteers and said, we need help. We have to provide these services. We're not going to shut the doors on vulnerable populations that just came in. And so we have really just increased outreach to our volunteers. We have new volunteers that are asking, how can we help? So the Refugee Resettlement Program is really the reason I got into this work when I met that first family, and we've helped hundreds of families since then in the Milwaukee area. We became a resettlement agency in 2023. We have our national partners is Islamic Relief USA. However, under this resettlement program, we have a partnership also with International Rescue Committee for the reception and placement program. After the 90 days, this is the most intensive program. There's programs they get enrolled in through the state-funded programs, but it's not as intense. So the first 90 days are really the intensive, where we have to really do the hard work. Other things that we have, like I said, a lot of wraparound services. We have a food program. We actually are the first halal food pantry designated in Milwaukee. We have a partnership with Hunger Task Force, and so every Friday we have many different refugee populations that come in, and they pick up a box if needed to help them. We also have, under our food programs, we do a lot of events throughout the year. We have Ramadan coming up, so we actually provide Ramadan food boxes to a lot of our refugees. We also focus heavily on women and children. During the Afghan crisis, we started an ESL class specifically for Afghan women. We received funding through the State Department for this particular. They were really focused on Afghan women. And fast forward, we're almost in 3 years, and I can tell you, and Deb, you actually, I think that's where you volunteer your time for childcare.
George and I made bears.
Oh, the bears, yes, you made the bears. And so this, just to see the difference, a lot of them now, some of these Afghan women have cars, they're driving, and they're speaking some English, they're writing their names where they're illiterate in their own native language. So just to see the progress that we've made to help them really integrate and become self-sufficient, it's for me, it's really humbling and just a great feeling to know that we've really helped these, vulnerable populations. Education programs. There's a lot of things that we do. I probably won't be able to touch. There are a lot of one-pagers if anybody wants to look at them. I do have some one-pagers and also some volunteer one-pagers as well. Educational programs. We also provide, we have a scholarship called the Dr. Ahmed Nassif Scholarship here locally, where we provide refugee students can apply, and it's called Dr. Ahmed Nassif. Dr. Ahmed Nassif was a Syrian doctor who actually opened up a restaurant back in 2018. It's called Damascus Gate. Unfortunately, it did close down last year. But he literally he opened up this restaurant and literally handed it over to a Syrian refugee and said, "This is your restaurant now." And so he was one of our committee members, and we formed a scholarship. He passed away from cancer. And since we've started this scholarship, we've been able to provide over 20 scholarships since 2021. We've been able to provide 20 scholarships. We can click next. So these are the populations that we've served, and I know there's some that probably not on there, but these are the current populations. I did put a asterisk on one. The Rohingya population is the largest population in the US here in Wisconsin. They are very self-sufficient and hard workers. All of these refugees are super hard workers. They contribute back to the economy. There is a study through the State Department that there was research done in a 15-year time span. And it's actually public. You can, if you Google it, you can actually read about the billions of dollars that refugees contribute back to the economy.
Can I ask?
Yes.
I think I heard you say that Rohingya are the largest refugee population in the United States now? Is
No,
that
they're
correct?
the largest, so the Rohingya population are the largest in Wisconsin. We have the largest.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But it's not bigger than some of these other groups in Wisconsin.
It is the largest
It is the largest.
in Wisconsin, yeah.
So where are they from?
So the Rohingya are persecuted. They currently, majority of them are in the Bangladesh refugee camps and also Malaysia. They don't like to say that they're from Myanmar, Burma, formerly known as Burma. But they speak, majority of them are Muslim. They speak Rohingya, which is actually not a written language. Some of them also speak Burmese. Majority of them are on the south side of Milwaukee. They have businesses, they have grocery stores. A lot of them do speak multiple languages because of the countries they might have lived in. For example, our case manager, she was born in Malaysia. Her family fled Burma probably 50, 60 years ago, but she was born in Malaysia. So a lot of these Rohingyas that are coming in are probably born in the refugee camps that they're coming from.
Why do you have Burmese /Karen and Burmese Karen?
Yeah,
Are they different groups?
yes. Oh,
No,
that might be a duplicate there. Yeah, that's probably a duplicate.
Duplicate.
Yeah, the Karen, so there's a lot of different tribes in Burma, and I can't remember, but I know it's quite a number, I think maybe over 20 to 30 different tribes, but these are the ones that we have worked with since we started Hanan. We can continue. So this is just a press release when we first became a resettlement agency. You can continue. Just some information about what we've achieved.
So resettlement agency is something recognized or designated by the federal government?
Yes, so we do have to do an application, and it goes, we have to do a consultation with our state refugee coordinator, and it goes to the State Department for approval.
Could you speak briefly on what's the difference between an immigrant and a refugee?
Yes. So obviously a refugee is someone that's they're forced to flee. An immigrant makes that choice to come, they're able to come here. My parents were immigrants, they chose to leave. Refugees are not, they're fleeing violence and they're fleeing persecution. So there's a huge difference between an immigrant and a refugee.
I see that you're seeking funding from the state of Wisconsin. Will that in part make up some of the difference if your funds are frozen at a federal level?
That funding was also initially, they actually they actually froze that a couple of weeks back in January when they first came out with that work order. Then they froze also any money that was given to the state, because it is considered also federal money. However, they unfroze the state funding. So yes, we are enrolling people in this program, but it's minimal services compared to the first 90 days where we're providing really intensive support.
And the international rescue, the IRC is independent, so that's not part of the government. So you're getting funding from the IRC?
No, so that is actually the money that we get from IRC is government funding. So so the way the resettlement process works, there is 11 national resettlement agencies. So it's HIAS, it's our International Rescue Committee, Global Refuge, Lutheran, I can't remember the ones at a national level, but there's 11 of them. So those 11, what happens is they have offices all across the US. So for us, International Rescue Committee is our mother, if you want to say. We're like the children, they're spread out throughout the US. And so we report anything regarding resettlement, we report to International Rescue Committee. Now, their funding for resettlement all comes from the federal government. And so everything that we're doing right now, all of our cases that we get from the UNHCR, which the state that goes through the State Department, then goes to International Rescue Committee, then comes to Hanan. So it's not an independent, the funding per se is actually not independent, it's actually the federal funding. You can continue. So this is just the program that I mentioned. This is actually, we awarded 7 Afghan women that actually came to UWM in 2021. They were awarded in 2022 Dr. Nassif Scholarship. We were able to help pay tuition, part of their tuition for that year. We also have ESL classes on site. So not just the Afghan women, we also have an ESL class at home, and we also have ESL classes for newly arrived refugees that rotate every 6 weeks. We refer them out depending on the level of English they speak. You can continue. This is just some of, we also have a youth program. This is state-funded program that we really work with the children. And Deb, I'm not sure if you helped with any of this, but we've been able to take children to different things in the community, like the museums, the Brewers games, to really help them feel welcomed and really integrate into the community. And they love the field trips. You can continue. So volunteers, we have approximately 300 volunteers throughout the year. Some of them might be what we call core volunteers that are on a regular basis, or they might show up for one of our seasonal programs. We do a back to school fair where we get a huge amount of children, volunteers that come out to help us distribute backpacks, and that's usually in August. And then we have some, we also provide out, we distribute turkeys as well. We distribute turkeys last year. I think we gave out 600 turkeys last year to the community. So our volunteers really are, for me, are like the core of the organization. We started as volunteers, and some of our staff members, Andrea Godica, I met her back in 2016. She was assisting the same family, the Syrian family, and now she's our community engagement manager. So we really value our volunteers. We throw volunteer appreciation lunches, and we've held some support groups, and we've also provided our events. We can continue. So these are just some of our partners, and I know we have more than this, but I think our assistant just listed some of them, but we work with, in order to help support the refugees, we have to work with a lot of partners on the ground. A lot of people will help us with finding jobs. We work with UMOS, we work with Maximus, we have the Department of Workforce Development. PBS Wisconsin actually provided us with backpacks and made beautiful quilts for newly arrived refugees. We host a lot of, we've actually also hosted health fairs to talk about hygiene and health concerns of refugees in the community. So these are just some of our partners that we've worked with. Yeah. And these are Islamic Relief, one of our national partners. They provide us also support wraparound services. So we do help certain refugees that might not be, we're not able to put them in state-funded programs. We also help them in other programs that are funded through some of our national partners. Okay.
That's the end of the slide.
Okay, yeah, so I wanted to kind of open it up to the floor and see if anyone had questions. I know it's a lot of information, but I recommend taking, and immigration services. This is one of our new programs that I mentioned about Barry, which we have a backlog in helping adjust status for a lot of our newest neighbors. They're hard workers, they give back, and when we need translation, sometimes certain languages we don't have in our office, our volunteers from the refugee communities actually come out and say, hey, we can translate for you.
What's ORR?
So ORR stands for the Office of Refugee Resettlement. That is also through the State Department, and that program is after the 90 days when the refugee first arrives. Questions?
I'll do a comment and a question.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll do the question first. So with the curtailment of funding, are we also no longer taking any refugees, or are we
Yes.
still bringing some?
Good question. So currently, there's a pause from what we know. So right now, no refugees are entering. They initially they said that Afghans that had special immigrant visas that worked alongside the US government, they would allow that in, but then now they put a pause on that as well.
So for people already here who are in the process, they're now in jeopardy, is that right?
So the people that are here, we basically have no funding for them. The State Department, even our administrative funding has been.
But what about the immigration status? Are they allowed to?
No, so they're here and they have their employment authorization card, they have all the proper documents, yeah.
Okay.
So they are legally here, and that's not in jeopardy,
Not gonna change. Okay, yep.
hopefully not.
And then.
Jeopardy now.
We don't know.
And then the comment, I just am on the fringe of this as an informal volunteer with 2 Afghan families. There's a group of us who've befriended and supported them, and I did a couple things through your organization. We went to the Milwaukee Public Museum with the youth group, and it's just been a huge joy. I just want to thank you for all that you do, and to say, years in, 90 days, and that's all you can do, I get it, but it's not enough.
It isn't enough.
It's taking like 6, 7 volunteers of us to help these families. 90 days, they're not ready to just
They're not.
go.
They're not, especially, I mean, we have families that, all different backgrounds, we have some that are super educated, speak English, and they still need help, and the ones, we just brought a single mother from Mali, and I can tell you, from Mali, we have 6 volunteers on that family. And I agree, it's not enough time. After 90 days, we have these other state-funded programs, but it's really the volunteers that help, and really they're the ones that help us with, we do a lot of educational sessions. We are having a, February 25th, we have a Know Your Rights for Afghans, because unfortunately we know, yes, they are here legally. However, any Afghans that came as parolees, if they didn't adjust their status, we were told that they could be deported.
What does that mean?
So parolee is during the when they came in 2021, when the US brought them over and flew them in. So if they came in as parolees and they didn't apply for asylum, then they didn't come in as a refugee. They're not refugees, they're considered parolees. So unfortunately, our Congress has failed to, there was the Afghan Adjustment Act where we were hoping that it would pass, but unfortunately it never passed. So anyone that hasn't adjusted their status, and many of them have adjusted, and we've had a lot of them approved for asylum. However, if they have done absolutely nothing to their papers, they can be deported. And so it's very frustrating because there are many of them that were soldiers and worked alongside, American soldiers, and so they could be deported. So there's a lot of anxiety in the communities, particularly in that community that we're working with. We do, one of our first Know Your Rights that we're doing is for that community. We'll have it in Pashto and Dari.
Has INS started deporting anybody from Milwaukee? And could you also talk about what the city of Milwaukee, what their position is regarding deportations?
So I'm not aware that I know of any refugees that have been deported from Milwaukee. I know, speaking with some partners around the US, unfortunately there have been Afghan refugees that have been deported. So we're really speaking with them to be careful of getting stopped for a traffic ticket or, but yes, Milwaukee is from what I understand, we are a sanctuary city. I know NPS has put some things in place, but the city in itself has, from what I understand, has not agreed to work, with INS.
Would it help to get the county to give free bus passes to refugees?
That certainly helps.
It's one of the things. Have you ever tried approaching the county and MCTS to get free bus passes?
I would have to ask our cultural orientation manager, because I know they work closely with Milwaukee. I know we do bus orientations, but I'm not sure if they have reached out.
Yeah, because I noticed that giving rides to people to doctor's appointments and job interviews and stuff is one of the roles for volunteers.
Yeah, we do work with the transportation company for medical appointments. We do have a lot of medical complex cases, so we do work closely with the medical transportation company in that aspect. But in terms of the bus, giving out free bus, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if they would go for that, I'm not sure.
Well, we have to lobby the county as part of the budget process
Yeah. That's a great.
And we might help you lobby the county board. I don't know how many bus passes it would be and the cost to the county and all that, but it might be worth trying.
Thank you, no, definitely.
What are your biggest volunteer needs right now, and what is the process for volunteers? Especially those who don't speak Arabic or.
Yeah, and you don't have to speak, you don't have to speak a certain language. I mean, Deb will tell you, you don't,
Smile has to go along.
I think, right now, if I had to say, it would be probably assisting with transportation, but also we are teaching ESL classes at home. We do have a curriculum for that. Our ESL coordinator has put something together, but helping us,
Okay.
And the transportation, we have to do what's called core services, and we want to continue doing those core services, where it might be taking someone to a appointment, just dropping them off. A lot of our volunteers might just do the drop off. So there's, we do have, if you wanted some flyers here, our volunteer coordinator and our community engagement manager can reach out and talk about more of the specifics, what is needed.
Is your group, does it work just with Muslims? That's my first question, and the second, the funding has been stopped for your group, but has it been stopped for the entire international refugee organization?
Yeah, so we help all refugees. We are, we did start in the Muslim community, however, we help all refugees from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Haiti. We actually brought in 2 families from Haiti, but we help all refugees that walk in our door. So it's not one particular religion. And then your second question, so our funding, yes, was cut, as well as all the other resettlement agencies that were cut, as well as USAID. I mean, actually it was the same memo that we received from the State Department also lists USAID funding, which is obviously affecting over 60 countries right now.
I just wanted to share, my name is Michelle and I work for Lutheran Social Services.
Oh.
We're also a refugee resettlement organization and we feel you and
Yeah.
we're in the same situation. It's really rough. We see what happens after the 90-day pause. And the need is real.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely tough, challenging times and really surviving. I mean, some resettlement agencies will shut their door. I think what's unique about our organization compared to some national organizations is, for example, our partners are wonderful at IRC. However, they work on a business model. Every office for them, we're able to go out and look for, grants and work with foundations. They work on a business model where every office reports to the national. They are all the funding channels back to their national, and we're our own 501c3, so we're able to really advocate and fundraise. So we are fighters, so we're hoping we don't shut our doors. And we were volunteers, so we started as volunteers. So it's definitely, like you said, tough times right now.
What's your sense of things? Do you think this 90-day pause is permanent or what?
Speaking with people that maybe were, as I was a volunteer in 2016, but some of my colleagues were actually in this work. We don't believe it's going to be cut. There's a lot of advocacy. Another thing I did I can email, we do have an advocacy template to reach out to your elected officials, but I think they're reassessing which countries we should bring in, for sure. I think, and the number of refugees, but I don't think they will cut the program. I personally don't think they're gonna cut the program.
To put it in a little historical context, and my name is John Ward, I'm retired State Department, so I've worked with refugee populations all over the world. The Trump administration 8 years ago cut the number to 15,000 per year. And that was down from, historically we've been allowing in 100,000 plus per year. The Trump administration cut it to 15. That forced most refugee resettlement agencies to close down 8 years ago. And then when we had the Afghan evacuation, there were no refugee resettlement agencies in business to deal with it. Now, the Biden administration, it actually took some pressure, but the Biden administration eventually lifted the cap to 150,000, but it only got to about 100,000 last year just because of capacity issues, really. Trying to predict the political future right now, if you can do that, you're going to be a rich person, but I have a feeling that the numbers will be cut drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that 15,000 per year level, and think about, Afghans and certain, and of course South Africans. There was an executive order encouraging that we allow South African immigrants in, white South Africans who are facing oppression in South Africa. And the numbers will be greatly reduced.
Yeah. I think it'll be greatly reduced, and there will be refugee resettlement agencies that won't survive, unfortunately.
NPR had a poll that indicated that most Americans were very happy with Trump's immigration policy.
Again, there's a difference between immigration and refugees.
Well, that's true.
I don't even think people know his policy.
If he has one.
If he has one.
I think also, I had the opportunity to speak at the state capitol a while back, in terms of, you know, sometimes they look at a refugee as an illegal. And so, the undocumented, what is undocumented, what is not. So people get this mixed up, because they look at what's happening on the southern border. And there are refugees that are coming undocumented from the southern border. And, you know, I personally, our organization have helped them through programs that are not federal funded. We've had some Afghan refugees that have come from the border.
But, I mean, to
but-
be legally precise, I
Yeah.
think people need to understand the
Yes,
difference
there's a
between
difference.
a refugee and an asylum.
Yes,
And last year, we had about 1 million asylees show up on the border, and regardless of your politics, that is a problem
of course.
that needs to be addressed somehow, you know, ideally through legislation. Refugees are in, by definition, they have to have left their country and be in a third country, and then they are evaluated, vetted by the UNHCR, and then the UNHCR, based on what different nations are, decide they'll accept. The UNHCR allocates certain numbers to each country that will accept them. Refugees are like the most highly vetted group of people that come to the United States, whereas asylees just show up at the border and then any vetting happens after that. So it's two very different issues.
Yeah, but I think what's happening right now is they're mixing the two right now, so people do not know, even some of our elected officials have no, I spoke at the state capitol and some of our elected officials don't know anything about the program in itself.
A couple things, you said something about an advocacy template, working
Yeah.
on applying that, and
Yeah.
also how much funding has been cut. And the third thing is, when you stop a program for 90 days, I can imagine how it would cripple things so much, makes it hard to start again, so.
Yeah, it is, you know, it is definitely challenging, but we've lost, for direct support, we've lost over $90,000 just for the cases that just arrived. For our administrative funding, it's around 320,000. And we brought in, since October, 148 refugees, so we're, you know, I'm an optimistic person, so I am gonna support these families. I just can't shut the door on vulnerable populations. Many of my team, I think there's about 6 of us that were volunteers. So even some of my staff members said if we have to volunteer, we will volunteer our time if it gets to that point.
And advocacy
Yes.
template you mentioned?
Yeah, so I do have, we did create an advocacy template to send out letters, and I can share that in an email. But we have advocating to Tammy Baldwin, Ron Johnson's office, and also Gwen Moore. And it basically talks about the program, the reception and placement program, and why it matters. And refugees take jobs that, to be honest, ordinary Americans do not take. A lot of employers, we work with a lot of employers, and they really work with us in hiring refugees. Even with language, you know, we have language issues sometimes, and they make it work because they are in need of people to work these jobs that ordinary Americans won't work.
So out of curiosity, has Ron Johnson shown any support for Afghans who help the military or anything like that?
John, you might have had.
Yeah, so I'm also a Welcome Corps volunteer. We just resettled an Afghan family, and we got another one that's stuck in limbo. And actually for Afghans, Ron Johnson Johnson's office has been very receptive.
Okay, so it's worth writing.
There are a lot of Republicans that are making noise about at least the Afghan allies. So in terms of advocating, it's actually best to go to Senator Johnson because he's the only member of our congressional delegation that can actually influence the administration. And his office has been receptive.
It's good to know. Thank you for having me. Feel free to pick up a one-pager, and we have some cards for our community engagement manager as well. Thank you.